Hi everyone, I'm gonna do a tutorial today of this photo from Sycamore Gap. This tree is now no longer there, but it's a really symbolic tree and it was a really nice paint. So this one I actually did with my students last week in class, and I actually did film it because I'm really busy with the commission at the minute and I wanted to use it as a video. However, the light, because there is a lot of glass, the light coming down, there was a lot of cast shadows, so I'm not going to use it, but as a treat for you all I'm going to put some outtakes at the end to show you how fun it is to come to a class with like-minded people. So please do watch to the end, and I'm going to do this with you today. So very simple drawing. I've got these lines coming up here for the dry stone wall. I've paid particular attention to the shape of the trunk. It's a recognisable tree, so we want that to be there, and a few branches. But I'm going to show you some techniques to actually develop the foliage, so you don't need to draw that out. So it's quite a simple draw. I'll pop this up big on screen so you can see that. I shall also pop the photo big up on screen so you can see that as well. Okay, so I am on Saunders Waterford. It is a very large block, so I've halved it, so this will be 12 by 9 inches. I'm just checking that's in there. It's a rough paper, £140, a cotton paper, really nice paper to work on. I've got Cotman watercolours and I'll work through those with you. I will mainly be using a round number 10, a round number 6 and a rigger. And then I've got a large squirrel mop brush. So I'm going to mix up some colours first. I'm going to start with the sky. So this palette's had a bit of acrylic in, so it is a little bit mucky in the minute, but it's just that it won't come off. So I've got about half a teaspoon of water into 2 wells. I'm going to take a pea-sized blob of cobalt blue. And check my colours as I'm going. So it's really useful to have this. So we've got a really nice blue there. And then I'm popping that blue into there, and I want a bit of burnt sienna, which I've not squirted out. And I'm going to make a grey. So you can see that changing. What's nice about when you pre-mix your greys is you get a really nice split out, which you don't get. I'm just going to take a tiny bit of that in to make a bit more of a grey. There we go. You don't get that with a pre-mixed grey. When you mix it yourself, you get a beautiful split out. Okay, so I'm going to come on with my wash brush. I'm going to get a nice sky on. I'm going to come down to the dry stone wall. I'm going to wet the whole of the sky. So I'm just levelling down to check that it's nice and wet. If an odd hair comes off, just leave that. It'll just brush off at the end. So I'm going to come into the blue first of all. Around number 10, pushing down to control the paint. Nice circular motion. It's a really typical Northumberland sky. Nicely overcast. Typical UK sky, really. That circular motion makes it look cloudy, and that pushing down of the brush controls the paint from flowing out. I don't want this to be too dark because I'm going to be putting a tree over the top. So I've got to be a little bit careful with how I've mixed these. They're not too dark. See, I've just dried my brush off, I've rinsed it, and then I'm going to come into this colour. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a stir. And again, circular motion. You want to leave a little bit of the white of the paper. You don't want to cover it all. It is quite stormy. I'm going to swap down to my round number 6. Taking a little bit more of the blue. You can come through the tree trunk, it's absolutely fine. Get sky behind the trees. So I get a little bit more on down here. Touch off a little bit. I'm going to take a little bit more blue just to flow through. What I'm doing now is I'm waiting for the sheen to go a little bit. Okay, so it is still quite sheeny, so you can see from the light that you've got a glistening effect, and what I'm waiting for really is for some of it to die down so I can come back in and create a stronger effect of cloud. So if you continue to come on when it's very, very wet, it just adds to the wetness and it doesn't work. You've got to wait for that sheen to just start to go. And it's not matte, it's sort of satin. If you think paint, it's not gloss. When it's glossy and glassy, it's too much. It's just going to give that extra depth into the clouds. You can also mix up thicker paint, that works quite nicely. Stick a little bit of thicker paint in. But you can already see the beautiful split out you get with that extra bit of burnt sienna in there. It just gives a really, really lovely effect. I'm just lightly whispering through in places. Okay, I'm going to dry this one off. Okay, so that's lovely and dry now. Nice warm to the touch. I'm going to come into this dry stone wall. So I want to get some clean film on to create the texture in the wall. So this is my round number 10. Coming on with a little bit of water. And then going to swap to a round number 6. This is raw sienna. I'm coming into first of all. Just going to bring that along the wall so it's neat from the tube. I'm just dabbing into a little bit of water to help it spread. I often use neat from the tube and just dab into water. Okay, so you've got a nice base on there now. We need a little bit of the grey in. So the grey's already been mixed up, so I don't want to add extra water to it. So I've dried my brush off. Now the thing with clean film is you need enough colour on there to do the effect. If you go too light, you're not going to get the effect that you want. So I want you to be quite liberal with the grey. So you can look where it's darker, take an extra bit in. And then I've got a couple of bits of clean film here. So I've taken them off the roller already, and then what I want to do is pop them on. You need little bits so that you can manipulate them. So if I pop on, and you want to scrunch it a little bit, but you've got to be a bit careful. There is a little bit that's run there, but I'll show you what to do with that. It works fantastically for dry stone walls when it works. So you're scrunching inwards basically, and then I'm going to leave that to dry. Okay, so I've dried that off and I've peeled the clean film off, then dried it off with the hairdryer. So you can see that the lovely texture that you've got, and it just looks like bits of dry stone wool. There are bits that have gone up and bled within the clean film. That does happen occasionally. I'm just going to work with it and I'll show you how I do that. So with the grey, I'm going to come in and just darken areas that need to be a bit darker. So this is with my round number 6. I'm just going to define this shape a little bit more. And you can use the texture that the clean film's created to break through and create a nice wall effect. So we're going to bring it down here. It's a little bit of artistic license happening here. So just adding additional shadow, just little bits. So this is all fairly dark down here. The base of the tree. Take a little bit of shadow just down this bit of the wall. So you're getting a light on the top edge then. That's working really nicely. So I'm just going to dry that off before we come on to the grassy area. Okay, so I'm going to come in with my wash brush and wet this bottom section. I want my round number 10. I'm going to start with some patches of raw sienna that's a bit lighter. And once I've got those in, I've got another colour here that looks very similar to raw sienna, but it's actually gamboge yellow, so it's a lot brighter. It just looks similar when it's wet. I'm going to come in with that. So we're mixing on the paper. Mixing on the paper gives much more vibrancy than mixing in the palette. So loading my brush with water. I'm coming in either side. I'm following that direction of the slope. And I'm going to dip into this cobalt blue and come through, again following the direction of the slope. I don't want you to play with that paint too much, I want you to let it do its thing. So this is the mix that we've used in the sky, and it's working really well. If when you come on that mix doesn't make a green, then I want you to add more blue to that mix. Depending on how strong your yellow is, you might find you need to add a little bit more. And we've got a really nice sort of spring summer vibrancy to this now. If I just pick up a little bit of the neat cobalt blue, just bring that in places, especially towards the front. Just going to flick upwards to create a few grasses in the foreground. It's all playing quite nicely. So what's happened here? I've got a bit of a watermark. So to fix that, so I've rinsed my brush out, I'm going to take on some more raw sienna. So that raw sienna has dried very quickly. If I take more water on, it makes more watermarks. If I re-wet the area that needs the raw sienna with a bit of paint, it works. So can you see that? That watermark has now gone. Okay, I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, before I dry it off, I just want to take a little bit of grey in. So with my round number 6, just going to create a little bit of natural shadow. It's that same grey that we've used in the sky. Just a few strokes here and there, basically. Okay, so that's nicely dry. I've got here a little bit of white gouache. I'm going to take a bit of that and a bit of the raw sienna in, just so I can get some of these lighter, little lighter bits on. So this is from my round number 6. Just make sure I've got enough raw sienna. I do find if I use the white, I can use it with a bit of the watercolour paint and it works quite nicely. Chinese white in watercolour does work as well, but not quite as well as gouache. It's not quite as opaque. So this is really just to get these lighter bits on, just to give an extra bit of light. So there's also a couple of rocks, so I'm just going to paint those in with the bit of the gouache. I could have used a little bit of masking fluid, but I've opted to do it with gouache today. If you don't have gouache, you don't have to put these in. Okay, so we've got a few rocks here. I'm not going to do them all, there's loads of them. Just going to do a few to indicate just a few. With the grey, just so that these rocks are a little bit grounded, I'm just going to come underneath so that they're not floating with the grey. Then just soften that in a little bit. So this is just with a damp brush, I'm just blending that through. They're working really nicely. Okay, so I'm going to go on to the tree trunk now. To do that, I'm going to swizzle around. So, I find it easier to paint downwards. So make sure we can see. I'll explain what I'm doing. So the first thing I'm going to do is take a bit of the green on. So that's the yellow and the blue. This is to get that sort of mossy effect on the tree. So this is with my round number 6 I'm coming on to dry. So you first got that yellow. Then you're going to drop some of that blue in. And then I have got here a blob of neat sepia. So I'm going to start to use some of that. So I'll start with round number 6. It's got some water on. I'm going to start to blend with that. You can come over this dry stone wall because the tree doesn't come all the way down. It's giving you a nice base. And then what you're going to be left with is that hint of green, which is the mossy effect. So it's always worth doing that. When you get to the bigger branches and the smaller branches, it's harder to do. But to get that hint of green appearing in there is lovely. I'm swapping down to a rigger now. I'm going to carry on these branches so they're getting thinner and thinner. Let's bring my photo back. When it's a recognisable tree, you've got to make every effort to make it recognisable. There's lots of side branches coming off. And I just find this painting downwards, you can get a much better point. You can always add more branches in after. I tend to go with on the basis that less is more. It tends to work better with less branches. I'm just getting a few main ones in. Now twizzle back round. That one in. Okay, so return it back round. You can see you've got your base of tree here. I'll dry that one off. Okay, so that's looking really lovely. I'm going to do some stippling now. So I have got a hog hair brush here. It's classically used for oil painting. This is one that I keep in my watercolour kit that I use for stippling. So any hog hair brush will do. Any children's painting brush that's got stiff hair will do the job as well. You can get them, pick them up very, very cheaply. You can buy special brushes that say tree stippling brushes, but basically a hog hair brush will do the job. So this is what I've got. I need the paint to be very, very dry. So what I'm going to do is take some of the yellow. So that was the Gamboge yellow and some of the blue. I'm going to make a green. Can you see how dry that is? It needs to be dry. You're going to keep your brush upright and then you're going to dab on. Now this is a bit of a process. I sometimes use sponging. It's a bit quicker, but this works to be quite precise. Okay, I'm going to take a tiny bit of water in, just to going to dab off a little bit. There we go. So I've got a little bit more. So it's just getting the right amount of water. If it's too wet, it will go blobby. If it's too dry, it will be too fine. So it's getting the right combination. And then what I'm doing is I'm rolling as I'm working. I'm following the arch of the tree. And rolling with the flat of the brush. Just keep it upright. And you just need to focus on getting the right shape first of all. So I'm going to roll this way now as I'm working around it. It's like the branches arch and the foliage arches. So you're getting those little arches happening with the roll of the brush. So I need a little bit more blue. Tiny dab of water again. So this is a slightly darker mix now. Which is good because it's going to give it variety. So you can see how this is a process that is a little bit of a labour of love. You've got to carry on and build up, but it's worth it. With a sponge it tends to be quite quick, but a bit more random. You can really build up a really nice effect. Trying to focus on the shape of the tree. Then what you can do as well is use some of the white gouache into your mix. So I'm going to take a little bit of the raw sienna in, just to lighten that up. And a tiny bit of the blue. Okay, it needs a little bit more yellow. Okay, so I've added a tiny bit more yellow in, that's better. You want it to be a lighter version of that green. The beauty of the gouache means it's just going to cover, and you can just get away with white gouache, and you can get away with Chinese white as well. But it's an easier way to break through the trunks. Create that extra dimension in there as well. So that's building up really nicely. See how it's covering through the branches, so it's giving it much more form. It's always nice to have. I'm not a purist when it comes to watercolour. I don't mind using a bit of gouache, I don't mind using a bit of ink. It's what I like to do. You do get people that are very purist about it. So that's got a really nice blend there. I think my tree is just not quite tall enough with the foliage. So I'm just going to bring a little bit further up, which is a shame because I'm nearly off the page. But I can just get it in there. Just shows even I'm not that perfect. I do things wrong. I could have really done with an extra centimetre up there. But we'll just run with it because we're learning. Okay. So there we go. So that's nicely finished and it's got a really lovely effect. It's showing you how to use a stippling technique and a clean film technique for dry stone walls. A really beautiful tree with a little bit of gouache in there. So please stay tuned if you want to see the comedy that is my watercolour class. Just because Gillian and Andrew sat there going, sap green, I haven't chosen sap green.
This should be eavesdropping.
I thought, right, I'm going to mix it up because they said sap green, I'm not going to use sap green.
God, I don't like sap green.
Yeah, it's not your favourite sap green anyway, is it then?
No.
Is that supposed to be all wet?
Yeah.
Good job.
There's a little bit.
I'm going to have a video of you pointing your finger everywhere, Andrew.
That's Andrew's finger.
I'm going to enjoy watching this one if you put it up.
Yeah. Even I don't know which colour I've got now. Oh, well, Sienna, that's all right.
So that's gone on dry, has it?
No, it's on wet.
Oh, okay.
Thanks to Andrew.
Mostly wet.
It looks quite dry.
Nearly all wet.
Well, I didn't want it to be as wet as last time because my sky was exposed with a little bit of water. I want a bit of the green on there.
Green? What green?
Run with it.
Yeah, cobalt blue to make it.
Yeah,
just gone straight in with that, likewise, yeah.
Right, and then I've got some sepia here, which is more of a natural colour for the tree.
Mm.
You don't sound.
Do you not like sepia
Convinced.
either, Andrew?
I don't know, I see there. I didn't think trees had lime green trunks.
I haven't finished yet.
Good job, you can't pick up the voiceover, is it?
I might put it on for comedy element.
Come on, we mixed it. Come again.
You're mixing some gamboge and cobalt blue together to make a green, but come and watch me first, because I have a feeling some of you will say to me you haven't got a white enough sky to be able to do it.
So what we're doing? What colours?
So this is gamboge and cobalt blue.
We've done this before, haven't we?
Yeah. And we're going to stipple in. So it's much more controlled than sponging. And you're arching. Can you see how I'm twisting with the brush?
So this is the same green.
It's the same green. I've mixed it up, but I've got a bit of gouache as well because I've got a feeling some of you are going to struggle to see it in the sky. So it's that whole arching motion. I'm rolling it with my fingers.
So
that
gamboge
you're getting
and
that.
cobalt, this is gamboge and cobalt, not sap. Is that right?
It's not sap, no, I've not got sap green out. It's the same greens that we've used all the way through.
No, that's so much better than a sponge.
Wait,
Yes.
so which green is this?
This is gamboge and cobalt blue.
aren't they?
It gives a more delicate texture, I suppose.
This is more precise. You either love this or you love the sponge usually. If you like precise, you'll like this better.
I think that looks better.
I do.
You're in more control, though it takes longer. So you've got a whole stippling process Whereas with the sponge, it's more dab, 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 and it's done quick. You've got to build this up.
And I've learnt that you need to look at the shape of where they are, because I was
to get
to get that
arc. Yeah.
It's that arc. You see how I'm twisting as I'm going? So I'm needs to be this side, Joy. Do with this a lot. You see I'm twisting like that.
With a sponge, you get lots of splodges, don't you?
Yeah,
which works sometimes.
Yeah,
but not so much.
Layer up.
Well, that's just because you want a little bit more depth of colour.
Yeah, I think the gouache on the tree has got a lot more depth. And I want to give a bit more depth. You don't have to do this.
Well, I was thinking one or two of us have probably already got.
You've got plenty of depth already.
Yeah.
I think so.
Nice looking wishy.
I think what I've missed, you've already outlined some areas you wanted to keep light, and I've missed that.
Yeah, down the centre.
Yeah.
Your tree looks as if the sun's shining right on it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Right, so I'm gonna come along at the bottom of the dry stone wall with a bit of the grey, so that I'm starting to accentuate that a little bit more. So I'm just using the colours that we've already used. Because it's cloudy, we haven't really got a direction of light. And I feel like we need something, so I'm gonna bring mine this way because it's darker here.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go.
I'm not. No. I don't need that bit.
You don't like that bit, Andrew?
No.
Can't do,
No shadow.
It
It's
just
just.
does look like a shadow of mine.
I can't do shadows at all. It's like splodges.
Well, it's within the wet, so it's just a very soft shadow.